and or the cut with the fentanyl. And whether we have the right even charges we can bring on some of the drugs that are being used to adulterate and that are causing the deaths that happen so quickly. So that is all a part of what we're working on in the legislature right now. So yes, we want to recognize that the user needs something other than an arrest and incarceration, but be aware that we are very much on top of, with law enforcement, like your chief and the district attorney, focusing on that issue of getting those traffickers and getting those drugs before they hit the street. So thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Representative Fernandez. Now you see there are 2 microphones on each aisle, and while you're thinking of questions, why don't you come down and line up behind the microphones, but I'm going to ask Father Manning to step up to the microphone first. We had a very interesting conversation before this meeting started, and he was telling me about how he spends some of the last moments with some of these families, and he's buried many of the victims of this opioid abuse. And I'd like for him to begin the audience component by talking about his experiences. Father Manning?
Brief anecdotal story that really breaks my heart. The 2 saddest Sundays in St. Mary's Parish is Mother's Day, seeing mothers in church crying over their children who have died, adult children included in that. And even more poignant is Father's Day. It absolutely breaks my heart to see men also weeping in church. They come to church to pray for their lost child. St. Mary's Parish has the sadness and grace of having usually about 140 funerals a year. So we have a critical level of care for people who die in bereavement that lets me gain some insights. In the past 12 months in our parish, we have had deaths between the ages of roughly 20 and 40, some caused by accidents, some caused due to related mental health issues, others such as cancer and coronary disease and other illnesses. But we also had 13 deaths that are clearly linked to drug addiction, of which 10 of those were 20 to 35-year-old people. One of the groups that I'm concerned about are the people roughly between 20 and 35, 20 and 40. What I see in trying to analyze and being with the families and thinking about the stories and what happened is oftentimes we think there are resources for them, and there may be, but they're not connected properly or provided properly. I also suspect there really aren't the resources that are really needed. It's what we offer. I think, in fact, what we really need to have for this age group, this is the group who die, is a really constructive entrance into long-term connected care. It is true, you can get a list when you're at the hospital or doctor's office, go here or there. It doesn't work in the end. As one of the people pointed out, there's no question. You don't make the phone call the second time. I think that we need to look at the issue that it needs to be connected and long-term care. And one of the issues is that too often they return to the setting where all the issues were, and they need long-term residential help structured life before they return. I think we need to look at some of those questions. Obviously, I'm in strong support of elementary and high school education and care, but I think that some of these folks did receive that in their lives. But when it comes to the issue of treatment care, the pieces aren't really in place. We may think they are, but the deaths of our young people are telling us they're not really connected, they're not really there properly. Thank you.
Thank you, Father. And I'd also like to recognize and thank Chief Gary McGarraher from the Franklin Fire Department for coming tonight and for all your great service to the community. Now, for this particular segment, we have 2 podiums set up, so if you have questions, I'd like for folks to come up. Please identify themselves. If you have a question for the panel, if you have want to address any of the other items that are on tonight's agenda, we'll deal with those agenda items through your comments. You direct the flow of the conversation here, and if you have any ideas for programs or other things you'd like to see us do. I'd like to try and get folks out of here by 9:00 p.m., so that gives us a half an hour to have that discussion. So we'll turn it to this side and we'll alternate back and forth.
Hi, my name is Max Marangello. I'm a resident here in Franklin, Massachusetts. And I know today we've heard a lot of sad stories, a lot of stories of despair, and a lot of people have had a lot of challenges. But I haven't dealt with substance abuse issues, but I have been in recovery with mental health and mental illness. And I have seen sort of a story of hope for a lot of people with mental illness. About 4 days a week, I go to this place called Crossroads Clubhouse in Hopedale, which Representative Roy and Representative Fernandez are familiar with. And it's helped me in my recovery. It's a facility where it's a community of people where we have a sense of purpose and we help make lunch for each other. We have a cafe, we have a thrift store. It's an excellent community, and it has structure for people and a sense of purpose for people. And there's lots of people there who are in recovery, some of whom have dual disorder. A dual disorder is someone who has a mental health illness and as well as a concurrent substance abuse illness. And it's provided so much hope for people, so much purpose for people. There's one person who likes, showing off different clothes that are available in her thrift store and trying to sell people different stuff in her thrift store. Some people like making lunch for other people. And it's really inspiring to see that people have a chance. And one of the other things that it's open to anyone in Franklin who has a diagnosed mental illness. It's funded by DMH. And then one of the programs we have as well is Dual Recovery Anonymous. That's every Wednesday and Friday at 4 p.m. at 11 William Street in Hopedale. And it's open to anyone. There's no charge. I think they might be dues, but it's a 12-step program. And that's open for people as well. I hear a lot of people asking about resources, and that's something that's available for them. And there is a lot of hope. Recovery is sort of a lifelong process, and I have a good friend who just received a 20-year coin for recovery. So I just want to let people know that there's some resources, and these resources have helped me in my recovery with mental illness. And I think that they're out there for all of you and your family members if they need it to help them in their recovery as well. So thank you.
Hello, my name is Sylvia Grady. I am the mother of a heroin addict. My daughter graduated from Franklin High School a year ago. She was one of the biggest anti-drug people you ever met all through high school. And then she went to college. And very shortly she became a heroin addict. And I hope no family ever has to go through the living nightmares that we've just had to go through for the last year. It was bad enough that my daughter became a heroin addict. But the road to recovery in the state of Massachusetts is littered with insurmountable obstacles. I mean, literally. I'm going to go over a couple of these things in a few minutes. But I just want to say, if any parent of an addict asked me right now, what would be the best thing they could do for their child? I would say, fly them to California. Okay? All right, 2 days before Christmas, I spent 48 hours on the phone calling every place that had a bed in the state of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. And in 48 hours, with non-stop phone calls, there was not a bed to be had. On 4:30, Christmas Eve, my sister in Long Beach, California, said, "What's going on?" I said, "Donna, 48 hours. I can't find a single place to take her." She said, "I'll call you back in 5 minutes." She gave me the name of 3 different drug rehabilitation centers around Long Beach, California. I called all 3 places on 4:30 Christmas Eve, and every single place said, "Bring her right in." Okay? Now, Back in June, before, when I first started this trip, I spent 11 hours, thank you Milford Hospital, because you were the only people that helped us. Spent 11 hours standing in a hallway, calling every drug rehabilitation center in 2 states. And finally, 3 o'clock in the morning, something opened up in Foxborough at NORCAP. But, had to bring her by ambulance. Wasn't allowed to just drive her there. So, on top of everything else, I'm fortunate enough, we have the resources to deal with this. The average drug addict doesn't have those resources. Okay? I spent more to pay for that 11-hour standing in Milford Hospital and that ambulance bill because it wasn't an emergency and they wouldn't take her any other way. I spent more for that than for 3 weeks of detox at the rehab out in California. And my daughter's treatment hadn't even started. Okay? She spent 5 days in the NORCAP Center. No mandatory meetings. Okay, there were meetings there to go to, but they didn't have to go to them. And after 5 days, they let her out. And there was no other place that would take them. Okay. I called a drug rehab at 6 o'clock in the morning, Christmas morning in California. And they said, bring her right in. 11:30 that night, I was dropping my daughter at a drug rehab center. Within 3 hours, she was on an antidepressant. She was on an opiate blocker. And she had an appointment with a psychotherapist in the morning, Christmas morning. Okay? There's the difference between treatment in Massachusetts and in California. They kept her in 3 weeks, mandatory lockdown detox there because of her history of self-cutting and depression and treatment for mental problems all through high school and stuff. Then she had a month's residential. Then they helped her find a place to go to, and they've supported her all along. I'm very happy to say I am fortunate enough that my daughter just received 6 months sobriety button last week. But I hate to say this, there's a 90% recidivist rate for treatment. Of the 30 people she went through rehab with, only her and 2 other people stayed clean. 1 other person fell off and got back on again. But the rest are still living that nightmare. Okay, we need to set up a system so when a family needs help, they can call their local doctor or call their priest, and they will have the information that a family needs in order to get their loved ones help. We need, right now, there are 868 detox beds in this state. We lost over 1,000 people last year. Those are just the people that died. They're not the ones all doing it. But there's only 868 detox beds. There are only 297 rehab beds, which are the treatment beds. There are 339 holding beds. We actually have more holding beds than we have treatment beds in this state. Okay, when I called my medical insurance company when this crisis first started, Blue Cross Blue Shield, I had to call them up with that lovely first comment. My daughter's a heroin addict. I need help, please. I need the number for rehabs. They put me on hold for 40 minutes. They came back. They gave me 2 phone numbers. I called them. They were orthopedic centers. So then I had to call them back and start the process all over again.
No, ma'am,
Yeah.
I don't want to cut you off,
No,
but
no,
I
stop.
kept everybody to 3 to 5 minutes here.
Thank you. I appreciate
I
it.
appreciate
We need to get a path into treatment. That is the essential thing, or you're going to lose all your kids.
Thank you, and that's why we're having this meeting tonight, to hear these types of stories. We'll move to this side of the room.
Hi, I promise I'll keep it short. Because I'm really proud.
That's why I'm here.
So I'm Shannon Fitzpatrick. I grew up in Massachusetts, grew up in Franklin, and then left and came back again. And I'm raising my daughter now in Franklin. I have worked in the field of substance abuse, working with people who are deaf and hard of hearing and with multiple disabilities, trying to make their way through recovery. So, so the child's been an addict, so adult child's been alcoholic. I know the 12 steps back and forth like it's nothing. I thought it was part of the catechism. I didn't know. But anyway, my point is that I have thought in my brain so many times of some very simple, practical approaches to things that we don't do, and I don't know why we don't do. One of them is if you can go into the police department and you can get a lock for your gun, why can't you get a lockbox for a drug safe? Like, why is there not a grant out there that can provide that to, I don't know, you could just walk in and you could buy an itty bitty little, or you can just pick it up because they're free for the gun safe, so why don't we have drug box safes? I know that they have them at CVS and they have them on the counter, but you can buy them. Okay, well, if we make things easier for people, they're more likely to do it. So a free gun lock is, in my mind, equivalent to a free drug box. So that's just one, just to throw that out there. And then, additionally, along the continuum of care, prevention, OD prevention, why are we not making Narcan available to the actual users? If one of the major risks of overdose is using alone, and if we can make Narcan available to the users, so, and give them the 5 minutes, the efficacy has shown that it's a 5-minute training to show people how to use the Narcan. That's all it takes. So why are we meeting addicts where they are? Like, if they are using currently, but is it accessible?
I think one of our panelists has got an answer for you.
So I agree with you definitely about lock boxes for our medicines, and we are trying to promote that, and there should be programs to make it easy for every household to do that, so I applaud that. Also, there is Narcan available for users. There's groups like Learn to Cope out there that give it to parents and give it to users, and we should have more of that as well.
Okay.
And on Learn to Cope is a group that has grown throughout the state. It's families who are in crisis, started by a mother whose son obviously had been in crisis, and they're one of our community partners, and I know that Jeff has been in contact with Joanne Peterson. This would be a ripe area for a Learn to Cope meeting. Now, one of the things about the Community Coalition is for people to sit down and to identify those resources. And so I heard a couple of parents, we have trained every single police and fire department in the use of naloxone and Narcan. And we hope that, like in the city of Quincy, which has been a national leader in the use of Narcan by the police department, has over 400 saves. But we also encourage, and you heard there's pharmacies, not every pharmacy has it, and the state is trying to push that. If you have a loved one and they have a substance abuse problem, you better learn how to use naloxone and Narcan. And you can get it, and it's readily available. If you can't, call the DA's office, we'll find it, because it's something that, more and more. The only problem we've seen in recent years, when I trained people about 1.5 years ago, was about $25 or $26 a dose. And now they're paying as much as $60 a dose. So that's the bad news. But I know that people have talked about, there isn't anybody here who doesn't believe that we can do more in treatment. And the chief and I, we try to arrest the right people, the people who are selling and poisoning our kids, and try to get other people help. Either he does it, or together we try to find people places. We're the only county in the Commonwealth that has a mental health, a veterans court, and a drug court. And so we believe in diversion and getting people help, because I don't want to see that most of the crime that's committed in Norfolk County is committed by people who have a drug problem. It's the assaults, the breaking and enterings, the car thefts, you name it. A lot of it, a high percentage of it is traced back to people with a drug problem. So we couldn't agree more with you. It is out there. We take some of the drug diversion money. We're supplying police and fire departments right now with Narcan so that they can meet the challenges. So I think if you look, and that's one of the things that should come out of this meeting. Now, obviously, I live at the other end of the county, and so who better knows what type of resources are located here in their community than the people who live here, who are sitting here, and your neighbors in Milford and others. So, for instance, the Weymouth Fire Department, after there's an overdose, or someone, particularly if someone has died or someone has been saved, that they go to that home afterwards and they drop off a pamphlet, counseling, help, assistance, or even burial information that they may need, and contacting your funeral. They have a package they put together. Some of that information has been, is being spread to the community coalitions, and people are adopting some of that. That's why we meet. We also have a pharmacy task force, and we're talking to nurses, doctors, dentists, nurse practitioners, people who are out there just the dispensing of medication. Think about it. You go to the emergency room in a lot of places, and if you talk to some of the doctors there, they'll tell you it's a negotiation to get them out of there. They give you 30 days worth of Percocet. Well, my wife had her wisdom teeth taken out. What do? They gave her a prescription for Vicodin. I mean, it's how doctors and others change, how they act, co-payment, insurers. There's a lot of moving pieces that I know my friends in the legislature are working with. Even the overdose meetings, when someone dies, they're happening so often. I used to meet every 4 months with every police department. Now it's every 3 months. Now it's every 2 months because the numbers are so high. And out of those meetings, we look at trends and identify trends, what's going on in the county. We've referred over 30 doctors to the Board of Registration of Medicine. The state has set up a prescription drug monitoring program. I personally think it should be mandatory, not just signing up for it, but they should use it. And we've referred a dozen pharmacies to the Board of Registration of Pharmacies. I'm not telling you what they're doing is illegal, or they can bring charges. What I'm telling you is a violation of standards of practice. And so getting more people paying attention around here in the medical community is a top priority. So we're doing a lot of that stuff, and I guess having the community coalition, and for us to tell you, whether you're the Milford Hospital or your counseling advocates, we have a lot of people who are doing a lot of things that we can bring to bear. And the community coalition, I think, is the best way to put it out so that you can pass that word on to your neighbors. So I applaud you all for being here, and Representative Roy for putting us together.
I just want to throw one more thought in there, and then I'll be out of here. And you don't even necessarily have to respond, but there was a thing from the YMCA. You're saying that we're not sure we're not experts in this. And one of my thoughts is after people are in recovery, generally a lot of addicts have a criminal history. And one of their barriers to staying in recovery is finding employment. And so if we as a community could commit ourselves to accepting the fact that our community is made up with people with a record, with people with a history of being arrested for breaking and entering, and that we might consider employing them, then that's one way to help them stay in recovery. Because without a job, you do feel a lot easier. You don't have to.
I'd just like to say one thing about Narcan. It's a great drug after the fact. There is a drug, Vivitrol, which once the addict gets the shot, stays on board for 30 days at opiate blocks proactively, which I much prefer.
And then over to the side.
My name is Steve Spiewkowski. I'm a probation officer in the Rentham District Court. I wanted to thank Representative Roy, first of all, for putting the coalition together. And it's about time. We've been struggling with this issue for a long time in the court. Today alone, I had 6 extended conversations with people in my office. Out of the 6, 4 of them were significant addiction issues, and 2 of them were phone calls after phone calls after phone calls trying to get 2 young ladies into extended care facilities for opiate addiction. And we're still waiting. That being said, I'm excited to participate today, and I'm hoping to be able to contribute. I actually had a question for 2 of the panelists, and I hope they don't mind me calling them out. One, I believe the 2 gentlemen in the middle are in recovery. Matt, and I'm sorry, sir, I forgot. Reinhardt. My question to both of you is, how long, it's a 2-part question, how long did it take you to feel like you were thinking normally from the last time that you used?
I'll let you know what happened.
And the second part of the question is, I heard you say that you have 5 years of recovery. Congratulations, we're trying to write stories like yours every day. So, what kinds of things are you still doing to maintain your recovery? And before you get started, for the gentleman who lost his nephew, we knew your nephew. He was a great kid. We all liked him. He was an enjoyable kid to talk to, and we sincerely share in your grieving. I'm so sorry to hear about that because he was a great kid. Gentlemen?
Thank you. How I would maintain my sobriety now would be living life as a good person, trying to do the next right thing, being honest, never going back to my drug addict tendencies, don't lie, don't steal, and living a good, honest life. And then also finally would be the 12th step is to help others. So I would have to spread this solution and message to other people like I'm trying to do tonight. And I'll go to meetings and help other people like myself and help them get their life back on path and talk to them.
So 5 years later, you're still in the program.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no problem, thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jean Sorrow. I'm a resident of Franklin. I'm here because I'm an advocate for very ill people. I advocate for medical marijuana. I advocate for veterans who have PTSD, drug addicts who are coming off of methadone, and children who are being treated with this very valuable medicine. To address the chief of police, in the fall of 2012, 63% of the voters in Massachusetts voted for medical marijuana. Here we are, July 2015, we have one dispensary open in Salem, and we have a couple of others in the pipeline, and you have a grow facility in Franklin on Forge Park, 60,000 square foot facility that's growing right now for two dispensaries. I want to present a study. I've done extensive studies on marijuana. I've gone to school to learn about it and be a part of this movement. And I've seen how it can help people and lessen their suffering. And my main point is, it's all well and good to tell these people, like, for instance, I have a study from the Carolyn School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania. And it was published in the Journal of American Medical Association and Journal of Medicine last August. Approximately 60% of all deaths resulting from opioid analgesic overdoses